Okay, this video is going to take us through a couple of examples of how to do the Vehicles for Trip program correctly and efficiently. And so these are from actual student submissions. And so what we have here is we have in our chart here, we have 5 different options from which to choose. Only one of them is going to be appropriate, and so that's why we're going to use an if-else and not a series of ifs. And so the compiler has to pick from displaying one of these 5 options. And so you notice those options, those alternatives, are listed in the clauses. Okay, and that's what's going on in there. So now this situation here, before we get to the actual if-else structure, just a reminder, she could have put the int here instead of having this line. So either way is good, doesn't matter which one you choose. So first of all, the boundaries are in ascending order. So it goes from 6, it gets higher, 12, 14, 20. Okay, so that's one way to do it. It's not the only way. She goes in ascending order, and notice though, because they're ascending, typically what's going to be needed is you need a less than symbol. So notice there are less thans. If she would have used greater thans, it would not have worked. She needed to use the or equals because she used the specific boundaries that made that option true as well. And so, and then notice that if the boundaries were, let's say, 7 and 13 and 15 instead, then all she would have needed to do was use the less than, which some students did. They just did less than, but they were higher numbers by 1. Unless you can use print or println, doesn't matter. Some students did use dialog boxes, and that's perfectly fine. All of these outputs right here would be show message dialog boxes instead. And then this would be the show input dialog method, and it would have to have the integer wrapper class with the parse int method in order to make it work within these comparisons, which these are all things that we've dealt with. And like I said earlier, don't use a series of ifs, because then there may be multiple options picked, and that would not be appropriate. Only one of these options is appropriate for the number of students going on the trip. Notice the indenting and the vertical space. And so the vertical space, which some students are still struggling with, some are forgetting to put this blank line. So if you don't have a blank line here, put that in there now. Should have a blank line here. Indentation, remember, this is some students are still struggling with this. They're having troubles with this. This should be just a straight line right here. We don't have this stuff over here on the left margin. Looks ugly. And then also notice then, the indentation here, one indentation here, and then this opening brace, and then indent one more time with the tab key. Everything looks nice. And then inside the clauses also, then those are going to indent even another time. Let's see, what else do we have going on here? So this is one way to do it. Oh, and then the other thing is finish with an else, not an else if. Okay, we start with an if, end with an else, with no Boolean expression, because this will take care of every situation that's not covered up here. This takes care of numbers all the way from 0 to 20. The only numbers that are left are 21 and up. So you don't need to say else if 21 greater than or equal to 21. You don't have to, because that's the only thing that's left. and so it will do the right one. So you don't need, so use an else, not an else if at the end. It's also okay if you included a no vehicles needed option. So some students added an extra option. It's not really necessary because 0 is probably not very practical as far as using this program, but that's okay if you did that. The other example that I want to show briefly here is this one, because this one now goes in descending order. There's a couple things that she did different here. And so she went in descending order, so 21, 15, 13, 7, etc. And notice the relational operator now, instead of being less than, is greater than. And so that's going to be the typical way that it works. Either one of these methods works. She stores the right, here's another thing that she did different, is she stored the right response inside of a vehicle. So she didn't print inside the FL structure. She just stored the correct response in a variable, which she declared outside of the if-else structure right here. Declared it there, and then assigned it the right response. So the compiler will pick one of these responses, only one, and then it'll store the right response in the vehicle's variable. And then at the end, she then calls that variable in a print statement. So this is very efficient. I like this because it's cleaner. It's a little bit cleaner inside your FL structure. But either way is good. Either one works. Let's see. And she does, okay. So yeah, so that, and notice she finished with an else, and she has good, very good indenting and vertical space as well. All right, so that's it for the Chapter 3D assignments. If you have any questions about this, be sure to let me know.